CIA. The reason was he had been in the CIA. In fact, he'd been in the CIA his entire life. And he had been involved in all kinds of interesting things. And as I went back, I started trying to reconstruct his life, and you will see in Family of Secrets I get into, and this is this military industrial apparatus I'm talking about. This is the real story of this thing. And what they're doing is they're controlling people on their way up, people in the presidency. They're shaping the situation we're talking about here with the kind of, why is there perpetual war? War as a business. A war as something that the United States actually can't even live without. The disposable dollars of our federal government, more than half of it goes to war. The percentage is ludicrous, and more than the whole rest of the world practically combined. And this is after the end of the Soviet Empire. And the answer is these kinds of elements, these kinds of stories that we don't understand anything about. And in truth, we don't understand anything about any of our presidents. We know almost nothing about Barack Obama. We know superficially. I mean, even if I were to ask you very well-informed people here to tell me about him, you probably know very little about him. He's an articulate fellow. He's bright. He did well in school. He's a good politician. He rose very quickly. That's it. Where did he come from, and why did all the money back him? Why do the people, the Dennis Kuciniches and so forth, and even he voted for this rather weak health reform. But why did those people never have a chance, even though they seem to actually represent many of the values that Americans seem to hold? And the story is this sort of secret history. And one of the things I discovered also was that, just a little tidbit here, George H.W. Bush couldn't remember where he was on November 22, 1963. Now, you know what that day is, right? The day John F. Kennedy was shot. How many of you were 5 years old or over that day? Okay. But half of you. Some of you look like you were 5 years older, but you didn't raise your hands, and I'll say that's okay. All right. How many of those of you who raised your hand and admitting to be 5 years old or older, how many of you do not remember where you were on November 22, 1963? Nobody? Now, one person? Okay. Well, that's interesting because he couldn't remember. And that was interesting because there are documents, and those documents are declassified documents, and they show where he was on November 22, 1963, and they relate to Dallas. They relate to the CIA, and they relate to anti-Castro Cubans, and they relate to a whole bunch of other things. What I found was so astonishing to me. I was warned by friends of mine in the media not to put this in the book. They said, I showed them my material, they said, this looks to be right. This looks to be, you've got it all documented, you write it in a very careful, responsible way. They said, I don't think you should get into this. This is the third rail of journalism where you don't want to go. This stuff is a career killer or worse. Or worse. And I was afraid, frankly, to put this in the book, but I'm glad to say here I am, still standing. We're spreading the word. We're spreading the word about the book by word of mouth on the internet. People are emailing their friends or telling them about it. Originally, I was told I was going to be on the Today Show. That didn't happen. I was supposed to be on NPR. That didn't happen. The New York Times was going to review the book. That didn't happen, and on and on and on. But we have gotten the word out, and people are reading this. And they're saying, my gosh, there's something else going on in this country. And by the way, many of the people who are reading this are not liberals or lefties or anything like that. They're libertarians. A lot of them are sort of apathetic. They have no political label. Some of them didn't even vote. They didn't even bother to vote. We have all kinds of people read it. I had a former Secretary of Defense read it and said it blew his mind. So we're reaching a lot of different people. And I guess what I want to say is activism is very important. It's also important just to educate yourself, to read. And don't just read the things by the people you've already heard of that confirm what you already believe, but try to find out what else is out there where people have some sort of provocative new explanation for events, and look at it. Some of them are nonsense, and some of them aren't. But we've got to get more Americans reading. Amazingly, by the way, apparently more people are starting to read again. This is something I heard. They're so dissatisfied with the mainstream media that they're seeking out books. And this is a very hopeful sign. Another hopeful sign, I'll stop now, but another hopeful sign behind it is just the internet itself. I know that with the work I've done with Family of Secrets and with our nonprofit, Who, What, Why, investigative reporting website we've just launched, we've got people who all they do is they sit at home and for a few minutes every day, they get on the internet and they read things and they forward them. And they forward them to people and they say, please forward this to people you know. And this stuff spreads. You could just be sitting at home in your bathrobe and have a really, really big impact. And that's very exciting. And if they don't manage to shut down the internet, we've got a real possibility of making some changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russ. Bill, would you please come on up and join us? Bill Hackwell, Larry Everest, and Russ Baker. We're going to do a Q&A right now, so Larry, if you want to secure the microphone, that would be great. We have Russ Baker's book here, Family of Secrets. We have Oil Power Empire, Larry Everest. We also have Censored 2010, the Project Censored book, and Peter Phillips and I will be here April 22nd talking about that. All of the speakers have mentioned very interesting things about Obama's wars. There are a whole host of things that we can continue to talk about. We have another half an hour to do Q&A, and then afterwards everybody is welcome to mill around, talk. This is also, please remember, a fundraiser. Thank you to all of those who have been able to give to Media Freedom Foundation and Flashpoints Radio and Investigative Journalism. If there's anybody here that can donate more, it's always appreciated. If anybody can get any of the materials here and even pass them along to somebody if they already know about the material, that's also very important. And just before we go and do the passing of the mic, if you get hands in the air, I want to try to go around and diversify and get as many different people as we can to have questions and comments. Russ was mentioning the third rail of American politics. It's highly arguable that in this generation, the third rail, left, right, or center, is 9/11. And anybody that wants to investigate or ask questions about 9/11, Project Censored was just censored by the Institute for Policy Studies, where we gave a lecture in Washington, D.C. because we wrote an academic piece about 9/11 scientific research. So, and again, people tell us all the time, don't write about that, or no one's going to pay any attention to you. But if it weren't for people writing about those things, you wouldn't have these people sitting here writing about and talking about the things they do. So we have to keep investigating and asking those tough questions, regardless of popularity. Please raise your hands if you have questions, and we'd like to come around. And if you'd like to direct a question to somebody, that's fine. Otherwise, the panelists can pass the mic around. Yep. All right. Let's try not to have comments posing as questions. Grandstanding. It's Berkeley. We're familiar with that.
Quick question back to you. And what was the source of that $130 billion spent a year here in California? And then to Russ, a question: what are the implications based upon the power analysis that you did on the Bush administration on present-day policies?
National Priorities Project, costofwar.com. So costofwar.com. You go and you can plug in your own community or any other community and find out. Russ?
The implications are that someone like Obama or whoever it is not free to do whatever they want in terms of ending these wars. I have increasingly come to believe he simply has no choice, that he was forced into what he's doing, and including, by the way, just the issue with the additional 30,000 troops. You remember there was a leak of that to the Washington Post that basically forced his hand. That leak was to Bob Woodward in Family of Secrets. I go into Bob Woodward's past and his own role in bringing Richard Nixon down, and as much as you may have problems with Richard Nixon, it's interesting to find out what was in the wings awaiting Richard Nixon's demise. And Bob Woodward played a very interesting, identical role as being the journalist who broke the stuff that brought Nixon down, broke the stuff, in both cases, fulfilling the interest of a certain wing of the Pentagon.
I'd like to ask a question about Pakistan. I saw the Secretary of State having the Prime Minister today of Pakistan. I can't remember his name. What's going on with the Predator drone attacks, the escalation under Obama with Predator drone attacks, and the massive refugee crisis in the Swat Valley? What is the game plan here of the Obama administration?